This is the M-66 R7 Cruiser, a moped-style step-through e-bike made by Addmotor. The 20 amp-hour Samsung battery is integrated out of the way into the seat and powers a 750-watt motor within the rear hub. A Shimano shifter takes you through the 7 speeds on the bike itself. The motor kicks in when you pedal. There are 7 levels of assist, from just a bit of help to doing nearly all the work. There is also an intuitive twist throttle to operate the motor without pedaling at all if you just want to ride it like a scooter. Stopping is provided by front and rear disc brakes. The front fork includes suspension. An easy-to-read display shows your speed, odometer, battery level, current power usage, and other information. The bike comes equipped with a headlight and a taillight, as well as rear turn signals and a brake light. There is a bell for alerting pedestrians, plus a loud electric horn if you need it in traffic. The bike rides on 4-inch wide, 20-inch Kenda tires fitted onto alloy rims, and the fenders are metal. The roomy banana seat is large enough to bring a passenger on board, and Addmotor has provided flip-down foot pegs where your passenger can rest their feet. I'll give you my impressions of how all this works a little later in the video, but first, let's take a look at how it arrives in the box and what's involved with putting it together. A smaller box inside the big box includes some of the bike components, manual, pedals, the power supply, and a set of tools for assembling the bike. The instructions suggest 2 people should lift the bike out of the box, but the cat wasn't much help, so I had to improvise. The front forks are protected by a temporary plastic bracket, which I was unable to remove with just the supplied toolkit, so I had to break out my own socket set for this step. The adjustable handlebar mounts simply and secures with the provided Allen wrench. The front axle has to be inserted through the front wheel. I ran into some trouble getting the axle to seat into the front forks, but eventually discovered an additional piece of protective plastic that was not noted in the assembly instructions. Be sure to put each pedal on the correct side because one side has reverse threads, which you'll strip out if you do it wrong. This is clearly noted in the instructions. Headlight, horn, and fenders all need to be attached and the wires connected. The battery is removable, and I set it to charging when I first started, so it would be ready to go for a test ride as soon as I finished assembly. That's it, we're ready to take it for a spin. So at the beginning of this video, I told you quickly about the features of this bike, and we've seen it going together. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I actually think of it. Now I'm going to cut right to the chase at the beginning and say I have been having so much fun with this bike. I love it. It's so much fun to ride. It's very, very comfortable. I've been having a blast. I'm really glad I got this thing. Addmotor did send me this bike to test out, but I have not been paid to make this video. I've not been told what to say. Addmotor has not viewed this video before it was published. They're seeing it at the same time as you. I personally have no stake in whether or not you buy or don't buy one of these bikes. What you're getting here is my honest opinion and impressions of this bike. Before I even accepted to test it, I did research it in advance to make sure it was something that I thought I was gonna like. The odds were good that my review was gonna be positive from the get-go. A couple little quirks here and there that, you know, are maybe less than perfect, but overall, super, super happy with this bike. Let's look at some details on it. This seat is part of what makes it so comfortable. This is unlike any other bike seat I've experienced before. I've ridden this thing for hours at a time, and I've not got saddle sore in the least. You'll notice that it's extra long, and there is actually room to put 2 people on here, and Addmotor has provided these foot pegs to allow a passenger on the back to have some place to put their feet. So that's a nice touch as well. A downside of this seat that I found is when pedaling, it feels a little wide between the legs. So if you're used to riding a bike and you know a bike seat is normally much skinnier and allows that sort of natural motion of your legs, it feels a little bit awkward. Because the bike is assisting with the pedaling, you don't have to work super hard pedaling this bike. So I've not found the shape of this seat to be significantly problematic, but just a detail that I wanted to point out. The way the seat is integrated into the frame, there's no height adjustment. This is what it is. You can't make this any taller. For someone taller than me with extra long legs, this may become less comfortable to pedal, again, because you don't really have to put a ton of effort into pedaling, or you don't necessarily even have to pedal at all. You can just ride it as a motor scooter. That may or may not impact your comfort level on this bike. You can see that I don't get full extension on my legs. I'm 5'9", so I'm not particularly tall, not particularly short. Between the seat shape and the height of the seat relative to the pedals, it feels a little unusual to pedal. But with the assist from the motor, it's really not proven to be an issue. I still choose this bike over my other one any day. In fact, the overall sort of lower center of gravity, to me, helps make this bike feel much more stable at higher speeds than my other e-bike that also has 20-inch tires like this. I've had this thing up over 30 miles an hour going downhill, which on my other e-bike feels uncomfortably fast and unstable. This bike, I felt like I kind of wanted to even go a little bit faster. To me, ultimately, this low seat turns into an advantage. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is a throttle that you can use to drive the bike. You don't even need to pedal. You can simply ride it like a motor scooter, and it's a lot of fun to ride around that way. The throttle is very responsive. The motor is very zippy. I personally have no experience riding motorcycles. I've actually never ridden a motorcycle in my life, but riding this thing was very, very intuitive and just feels very natural. I found the brakes to be as responsive as I need them to be. I've not had any issue with stopping the bike even when I'm going at a pretty good speed. Likewise, the shifter goes up and down through the gears with no issue. I do find that I tend to stay in the higher gears on this bike. The lower gears are pretty low, and when you add in the pedal assist, there's very little need to be down in the lower gears at all. The display is nicely positioned. It's clear, easy to read, intuitive. It shows you the information that you need. There are other sort of layers to the information on the screen that you can bring up, but for me, the speed, the odometer, the battery level left, and the current battery usage, those are really the main things that I need to see. When the lights are on, this screen lights up, so when you're riding at night, you can see the screen. When you use the turn signals, it does flash on here, shows you that you've got your left or right turn signal on. The front headlight is adequate to be visible to other cars. I don't find that it's super, super helpful on a really dark night to see super, super well where you're going. If you're riding in places where you don't have street lights, a supplemental light on the front would probably be a good idea. The tail light is nice, and the fact that it's actually got a brake light that lights up when you hit the brakes is great, and the rear turn signals are awesome also. This bike comes equipped with a bell on the handlebar. so you can warn pedestrians in front of you that you're coming. If you're out in traffic and need to get the attention of like a car, the electronic horn makes a lot more noise than the bell. Yeah. This bike comes with a couple of keys, and the key is used to remove the battery pack from the bike. Once the battery pack is on the bike, you actually do not need the key to operate the bike. You just simply turn the bike on with a button on the battery here, and then the power switch up here. That means the bike can be operated without the key. So if you stop at the store, go in someplace, you're definitely going to want to lock this up. So this comes set up as a Class 2 e-bike. That means the motor will top out at 20 miles per hour. In most jurisdictions, that allows you to operate it like a bicycle in bike lanes, on bike paths, through parks or whatever. I believe it's possible to reconfigure this to be a Class 3 e-bike, which will go, I don't know, 28, 30 miles an hour or something like that. That impacts the legality of where you can ride it. I've been enjoying this at the Class 2 level. It's plenty zippy. It gets me all around town. I can run errands on it with no problem at all. And I like the fact that I can get off of the streets and use the ample network of dedicated bike paths that we have here in my city to dart around town, actually sometimes faster than I can get around town in my truck. I love these wheels that are not just typical skinny little bike spokes, but it's actually a solid alloy wheel with the 6-spoke design. It looks good, and it also looks like it's going to be very strong and hold up well. The tires have been great. I didn't really get this with any intention of off-roading it in any way. I really just wanted it as a commuter bike to run errands around town instead of driving my truck and burning gas. These fat tires have a nice aggressive tread, and they've been plenty grippy the few times I have gone off pavement with it. This bike actually has its crank gear completely protected within a double outer disc sort of protection system. I'm not mountain biking, off-roading this thing. I'm not really concerned about it, but it does have a nice sturdy looking build that is designed to protect that front gear. I believe that Addmotor is now offering a version of this bike that has rear suspension that's for a higher price. I've actually found that between the front suspension and this extremely comfortable seat that I don't feel like I'm missing anything back here. This is by far the most comfortable riding bike I've experienced in my life. Alright, so while I don't mind pedaling this at all when I'm out riding it, in fact I kind of like the activity. I don't get a whole ton of exercise, and so it gets me out, it gets me moving, and in the colder months the activity is kind of nice to sort of keep me warm riding around. I am curious to know just how far I can go on this without pedaling at all, just sort of using it as a little motor scooter. So it is all freshly charged up. I've just unplugged it, and let's just go out and see how far we can go. I'm going to set the timer, and we'll take a look at the odometer, and we'll see how far we get today. So we're at 37 miles on the odometer. That's how many miles I've put on this bike so far. And let's start the stopwatch, and we'll just log how many hours and how many miles we can go on this without pedaling. For the range test, I rode the M-66 R7 basically like a moped, using the throttle only. I rode around a hilly part of town, took it through some stop-and-go downtown areas, and cruised a large chunk of our riverfront bike path system. Alright, 10-mile check-in. We've gone 10 miles. It's now at 47. battery indicator is still showing very full. I've been riding around for 50 minutes now. Let's keep going. All right, another 10-mile check-in. We're at 57 miles, so we've gone 20 miles, and we've been riding for an hour and a half. Let's keep going. Okay, we've logged another 10 miles. We're now at 67 miles. The battery indicator, I don't know if you can see that. The battery indicator has been popping between 1 and 2 bars depending on sort of how up and down we are. So it sort of varies according to how much battery it thinks we have left according to what we're doing. 2 hours and 10 minutes so far. I think we're getting close to the end here, because it's hanging out on the 1 bar more than it's hanging out on the 2 bar. All right, so we made it back home. 68, so we've gone 31 miles. The battery indicator has popped back up to 2 bars, but I think we're pretty close to the end of what we could reliably go on. So that's pretty good. 30 miles just riding around without pedaling. 2 hours and 18 minutes of riding time. This was a pretty cold day, and I kind of wished I was pedaling just to keep warm. I don't know if the cold may have impacted the battery performance somewhat, though even if it did, ultimately the results were still impressive. The website claims 105 miles, and I'm sure that assumes the rider is also pedaling. Based on my results, riding 30 miles without pedaling at all, I believe I could easily go 100 miles on a charge if I was providing some pedal power. Overall, super happy with this bike. Really love it. I look for excuses to get out and ride around town on it. And even if I don't have any place to go, sometimes I just go out and ride for the fun of it. You'll find a link in the description below if you want to go take a closer look at this bike. Thanks for watching.